Hi folks, and welcome to another First Impressions of a Clan Wars tank. This time we're looking at the VK72.01K, a Tier 10 Super Heavy German. This is, well, I'm going to talk about the history in a moment, but before I do that, this is my first game in the tank, and once again it says Beyond D up here, but it's not Beyond D, it's me, because I borrowed his account for the day, just to get my hands on these tanks and to see how they would play out. So yeah, this is my first game of the tank, and loading into the tank, loading into the game, I was looking at the tank and I was thinking, okay, boy, is this thing ugly. This thing is incredibly ugly. Alright, yeah, okay, it's basically supposed to be quite well armored. You don't see them on the battlefield very often, and I have absolutely no idea what these things are here to either side of the turret. It looks like a lava turret, but yeah, these things here to the sides, no idea what these are. Maybe for equipment storage, maybe for infantry to hang on to, sit on, I have no idea. But yeah, once again, you absolutely nothing about this tank going into my first game. As you can see, the equipment setup is exactly like Beyond D would, didn't change anything. He has 14 heat shells, which I can't bring up the information for. He has 10 HE shells, he has a large repair kit, he runs chocolate, and a premium fire extinguisher. So we've got a fire extinguisher this time. And as I said, know nothing about the tank as I'm playing this game. Now, this is my first game in the tank, and this is not the subject of the video today. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to play this maybe play this on times 4, times 8 till I get into the position. And the reason I'm showing you the first game is because what happens in the first game pretty much happens in the next 3 games I play in the tank. Okay, so we've advanced. We've managed to get a nice shot into a T-28 who then dies. There's a Jagdpanzer E100 down here. And our T-110 E5 get a shot into the Jag Tiger, or the Jagdpanzer E100. RT in play, I'm bouncing shots, I got penned once, but, you know, trying to go for cupola shots, we're able to pen the cupola, we're firing heat. It is the E100 gun, so you expect the penetration values and everything else to be the same as the E100, but I can't drag them up, and, yeah, we take out the E5, take out the bat shot, and while we're fighting down here, oh, and there's RT, as I say, lots of RT in play. As you can see here, we are now down to two tanks, so we are 5 minutes into this game and missed that shot, and this is basically the situation. So my team has completely collapsed. I did my job, came down here, killed, you know, a lot of the enemy tanks. We killed 2 Tier 10s, the Jagdpanzer E100, T110 E5. We killed a Tier 8 T28. And by the time I'd killed those tanks and turned around, my entire team were dead. So yeah, we've done 2,661 damage. And there's really nothing I can do, just too many enemy tanks left. So yeah, not very good, not a very good first impressions of the tank. We picked up 3 kills and then died because the team didn't stay alive long enough to do any work. And I'm showing you that because exactly the same thing happened in the next 2 games. The next game I played was on airfield, exactly the same thing. Went up to the heavy tank position, was doing some damage, and then suddenly realized it was 11 versus 2 and only 3.5 minutes of the game had gone by. The next game was South Coast, and actually South Coast I died fairly early, but once again, complete team collapse, Tier 10 game, and yet the game was over in 3.5 minutes. So yeah, I didn't have I didn't have any good games in the first 3 games in this tank. It actually took 4 games to actually win anything. So you're going to get to see the 4th game in this tank where my team actually doesn't collapse, but it's the best footage I got showing off the tank while, you know, in my limited time in it. So we're just going to go into that game now. So this, correction, is actually my 5th game in the tank. When I was going through the game files to bring up this game, I realized I'd actually played 5 games in the tank. So the first 3 were terrible games, team collapsed. You know, most of those games were over in 3 to 4 minutes. The 4th game, unfortunately, I got killed very early on because I made a mistake, like the complete moron I am, but our team went on to win, so I had a terrible game, but it was a win. And then finally, I got into a 5th game in the VK. here on Redshire with no RT. That's always a bonus and probably the only reason why this was a half-decent game. It's not a great game, but as I say, my time was limited, so I'm just bringing you the best of what I had in the time I spent in the tank. According to Wargaming, this was developed by Krups in the early 1940s. It never made it to production. It was simply available only in blueprints, and the only people who have seen those blueprints apparently are Wargaming, because every other source out there, experts, I'm not an expert, I'm only a hobbyist, but experts have basically said that this tank doesn't exist. And the tank that's called the VK72.01K did exist. There is a wooden model mock-up. There are photographs of a wooden model of the VK72.01K, and it's not this tank. It may look like this tank, but it's not this tank. And basically, the reason is the name. But this is just, I don't know. I was logging into the game. It's rear-mounted. It basically has the same gun as from the E100, and it's incredibly ugly. But yet, at the same time, there's something, I don't know, something about this tank. It's almost ugly cute, kind of like an ugly baby. Even an ugly baby is cute, and there's something about this tank that's quite cute. But yeah, I mean, okay, aesthetically it's quite ugly, but anyway, let's get on to this name, because this is a VK72.01K. Now I'm going to drag up a screenshot of the German tech tree. Okay, here we go. Now, when we look at VK and the numbers and the letters, it gets quite confusing. It can look quite confusing. I mean, there are a lot of VKs on the German tech tree, but it's really, really simple to understand once you understand the system that's used to name these tanks. So, first of all, the VK basically stands for tracked vehicle in German. I'm not going to try and pronounce the German, but it basically means tracked vehicle, and anything with a VK is more along the lines of a prototype or a blueprint, something that never made it into production. Once a tank made it into production for Germany, they were normally given a name like the Ferdinand or the Tiger or the Panther. If it doesn't have a name and it has the designation VK, it kind of means it's a blueprint or a concept or a prototype. So VK just basically is German for tracked vehicle. Then we've got the letter at the end, and the letter at the end basically stands for whatever company built the tank. So there were four main tank producing companies for Germany during World War II. You had Henschel, who built the famous Tiger. So basically any tank that ends with H was built by Henschel. Any tank that ends in P was built by Porsche. Any tank that was built by D means it was built by Daimler-Benz. And any tank that was built by M means it was built by MAN, the company who later went on to build the Panther. So you've got four letters, and they all stand for four companies that build German tanks. And then you've got the numbers themselves, and these are very easy to decipher, because basically you can see that even though I don't say it when I'm pronouncing the name of a tank like the VK3002M, that's not technically correct, because what we actually have here is VK3002M. So the first two letters here are the weight, our first two numbers are the weight of the tank. So it's very, very easy. When we take a look at the first VK down here, we can see it's a tracked vehicle. 20 is the weight of the tank. So a tracked vehicle, 20 tons. 1 is the model or the version. So it's 20-ton tracked vehicle, Model 1, built by Daimler-Benz. When we come down to maybe the VK3001D, that's the tracked vehicle, 30-ton, Model 1, built by Daimler-Benz. Tracked vehicle, 30-ton, version 2 or Model 2, built by MAN. VK36 is a tracked vehicle, 36-ton, version 1, built by Henschel. So when you decipher the names, they actually make a lot of sense. The layout isn't confusing once you understand how to break it down. Which is pretty much why the name VK72.01K is not exactly accurate, because it's a tracked vehicle, it's 72 tons, it's Model 1, and it was built by Krups. Okay, so there's a fifth company, I forgot to mention K, Krups. So yeah, VK72.01K means tracked vehicle, 72 tons, version 1, built by Krups. And that's not this tank. That's not this tank. You see, the VK72 was actually a series of tanks that later became the Löwe. There were 4 different variations of the Löwe. That's why it looks as if it has a Löwe turret. There were 4 different variations of the Löwe, and basically the VK72.01, VK72.02, VK72.03, VK72.04. So 4 different versions of the Löwe, and the first version was a rear-mounted turret version of the Löwe. Later versions of the Löwe were the turret was mounted in the middle or even towards the front, depending on the plans. And the Löwe we have in game is an amalgamation of all 4 models. So, you know, the Löwe we have in game technically isn't historically accurate because it kind of steals parts from the 4 different variations, and Wargaming have combined them to make one single Löwe instead of 4 variations of the tank. But this was the original Löwe, and it was supposed to weigh 72 tons. However, this tank happens to weigh between 120 and 130 tons, depending on the equipment and modules on the tank. So therefore the name is just wrong. The name is just wrong. It can't be the VK72 because that's a Löwe, and this is a super heavy German tank, so it weighs a heck of a lot, which basically means that wooden mock-up of the VK72.01K is a Löwe. It's the first version of the Löwe. It's not this tank, even though it looks very, very similar. So this tank gets 200 millimeters of frontal armor that's slightly sloped, incredibly well armored, but it's also very, very heavy, and that means that the name designation is wrong, which pretty much points you in the towards the fact this tank is not historically accurate. It's a little bit of a fantasy, but it doesn't matter. I know a lot of you guys out there don't care about history, and the fact that this tank can drive around, has a big gun and goes pew pew is enough for you. If you're into history, then this tank can be a little bit annoying and a little bit controversial because it never existed, but that's just me, and I'm just putting the information out there. Do what you want with it. Anyway, we are here on Red Shar. We're going to get into this, and as I say, I've got the same layout as Beyond is using, which means a lot of heat. Now, what I didn't know when I was talking to Beyond after playing the tank is that he's got a lot of heat, but he very rarely fires heat. He mainly fires the HE. So he plays on the front line, he plays aggressively, but he mainly fires HE. He fires more HE than he does heat in this tank. So there we go. The other thing about this is it's got the E100 gun. It's got an E100 gun, but unfortunately the original VK... Oh, stop. Get rid of it. No, stop. Yeah, the UI is still messed up. This gun, the 150mm or the 152mm or whatever it is, it's historically inaccurate because none of the Löwes were designed to carry a gun this big. They were designed to carry the Long 88 or a later variation of the Long 88. So, yeah, even the gun is historically inaccurate. All 4 Löwe versions had a different gun. But this is the E100 gun, and as a result, it gets compared to the E100 quite a bit, and I would disagree. I think this tank is a lot more like the VK4502B. It plays like the VK4502B. It's rear-mounted like the VK4502B. VK4502B, as the name suggests, is a tracked vehicle, 45-ton, version 2. Built by Daimler-Benz. Or Porsche, sorry, it's a P, version B, Aus A, Aus B, so it was built by Porsche. But yeah, unfortunately I exposed a lot of my tank, trying to get a shot into the lower glacis, and as I say, my first few games in this tank were awful, absolutely awful, so I over-angle, overexpose my side. This tank is amazing at side scraping, and I screw up. Get shot by a T110E3 and get shot by the T10. I failed the accuracy on the gun. Failed to put a shot into the lower glacis, even though I had an easy shot, hit the rocks. So yeah, it's not a good start for me. Terrible start for me, but that was a very, very quick lesson in not over-angling. So I've lost half my health, I've done 0 damage, terrible start to the game, but I've learned my lesson. Don't over-angle in this tank. So here we go. Because it's rear-mounted, we can do stuff like this. So just advancing up the hill, we've got 7 degrees of gun depression, but again, I didn't know this when I was playing the tank, but 7 degrees of gun depression is pretty good all round. So I'm just waiting for the E3. And we got a shot into his lower glacis. We get one in, 836, and there we go. This is what the E100 gun can do, but unfortunately sometimes it can just roll incredibly low. This is a gun that rolls quite high or incredibly low. But yeah, once again, rear mounted turret, just able to reverse up the slope, looking for shots, looking for the lower glacis, not going to get one, looking for the cupola, and we hit the gun mantlet, unfortunately. So I don't know whether that was luck from the E3, but he raised his gun just as I fired. He hit his cupola, and I ended up hitting his gun mantlet. So I'm wasting a lot of premium ammunition here. And as I said, I didn't realize that Beyond D mainly fired HE as opposed to heat. So I'm wasting his credits. I'm sorry, Beyond. But okay, moving. Yeah, there we go. You can see the accuracy. We didn't fully aim, but once again, snapshot cupola. Cupola was mainly filling the reticule, and the shot goes high, misses the cupola. You can see that the reload is not amazing. We're going for a cupola shot, decide to fall back, so he has a harder shot, harder time hitting me. And 735, leave him on 66 health, and unfortunately that means that our E50M dies. So if I'd been able to kill him and didn't get a low roll, our E50M would still be alive, so that's a little bit disappointing. But we're working on this flank. We've killed 2 tier 10s, we've killed 1 tier 9, and that's pretty much it. Now, we know that there's a lot of tanks camping down around F4. We know that we've got a lot of tanks of our own team camping in C5. You know, they're struggling to get spots. There's a T49 that's relocating, but looking for shots up into the middle, messing around with the gun depression. As I say, at the time I didn't know how much gun depression it had, but unfortunately the tanks that are being spotted are outside of my render range, so I can't see anything. And we're just going to advance. So you can see that going downhill we get up to about 40 kilometers an hour now. Compared to the E100, and as I say, a lot of people compare this tank to the E100, but really it's just down to the gun. I really believe it should be compared to the VK72.01 tier 9, but compared to the E100, compared to the Mouse, this is quite a mobile, heavy tank, super heavy tank. It's definitely a lot quicker to accelerate, a lot quicker to maneuver than the Mouse or the E100 is. The turret armor was incredibly good. Anytime I got shot in the turret, I tended to bounce. And the only time I really ran into problems is when I exposed my lower glacis to tier 10s. It's good against lower tier tanks, not so good against tier 10s. And over-angled, as you saw at the beginning of this game. But RU-251, don't have much to shoot at, house in the way. We're just moving forward, and we're hoping to do some damage. E75's on the other side of the hill, and again I mess up because I'm looking at this E75 and I don't realize he's on the other side of the hill. I should be looking at the mini-map more. And this is another game where you can see now, oh, there we go, really low rolls, 600 damage into the bat shot, but this time I've got my reticule. I've got my reticule back. It suddenly reappeared, but at the time I was playing this game, this black reticule I didn't have the black reticule. And as a result, I couldn't feather tanks. But now we're side-scraping, and as you can see, I've just been shot by an STB and a Conway. Conway is bounced again, STB moves up. We take out the STB, bounce the Conway. And someone's firing HE, but we're angled. We've now basically been tracked by the Conway. Conway's been spotted, don't have much to shoot at. And yeah, I mean, the armor can be very, very good. We're getting tracked, but we're not taking any damage whatsoever. We'll go for a panic shot in the E75. Decide to repair, because whatever tank up there, probably the RU-251, keeps firing HE, keeps me perma-tracked. So, or maybe I didn't use my repair kit. What am I talking about? Let my crew repair that. Okay, it's been a while. First time I'm watching the replay since playing it, but, and shot goes high! We had a kill shot in the RU-251. Now, I really should be firing HE. I really should be firing HE, but unfortunately, I'm just playing it the way Beyond has it hooked up. So, yeah, T62A at our rear, and I notice our Jagdpanther's on low health. I can take a hit. Want to keep my front to the, mainly the Batchat and the TVP, T50, T51. They're the tanks in front of me I'm most worried about, but I don't want a T62A getting to my rear either, so the Jagdpanther 2 is a useful ally, but he's a one-hit kill, and I'm kind of coming back to try and see if I can kill the T62A, save the Jagdpanther. Just reversing, no sign of him. Come on, oh, there you are. Ah, you're not going to flank me today, sir. So we take out the T62A, And now we should be safe to our rear. We can focus on the front again. So, oh, that was a big hit. I have no idea what that tank shot that shot me. Maybe it was the E75, but that was a big hit. We lost a lot of health. But lots of tanks being spotted, and now it's just a matter of trying to get into a position where I can actually shoot them. And you can see me struggling because I don't have that black reticule. I'm trying to find tank outlines with my main gun, but it's really difficult. It's amazing how important that little black reticule is, showing you which way is center. So blind shot on the bat chat, and no hit. That would have been a kill shot, but must have hit the wreck or must have hit something else. E75 is advancing, and I'm on a reload, so even though it's got the E100 gun, unfortunately the VK72.01 has terrible reload. The DPM is worse than the E100 because the reload is slower, but you can see that basically we're bouncing, we're side scraping, we're at a perfect angle now, and this is when I enjoyed the tank. When my team wasn't collapsing, when I wasn't being flanked by enemy tanks or bat shots getting to my side and rear, I was able to side scrape, I was able to bounce, but it's really just a matter of our tanks advancing and spotting enemy tanks, because we've got 3 tanks that are sitting down in C6 or C5 and they haven't moved. They haven't moved. They've been there for the entire game, and we really need eyes on the enemy bridge, on the enemy hill. And as a result, I'm reversing. Yep, okay, tank's still there, reversed, got spotted, but they're in stealth, and I can't spot them. So I need someone else to do some spotting. E75's on the other side of the hill. T49 struggling to spot anyone. And it's not a great game, but at least I'm side scraping. Batchat just took a couple of big hits. Our T49 is finally starting to move forward to spot, and I'm getting shot from yeah, there we go, we've just bounced 2 more shots. I'm getting shot from stealth. So I kind of want to advance, but with only 980 health against 2 very dangerous autoloaders, and the Conway isn't too shabby when it comes to penetration. I'd love to be more aggressive, but unfortunately I can't. I'm switching angles to see if I can spot anyone. Continuing to side scrape. I'm down to 2 rounds of heat left. This is going to be a very expensive game, and it's not a great game, but it's probably the only game I played in the VK that actually got off to show off the armor, got to show off the side scraping, got to show off the gun and the mobility. So yeah, it's the best I could do, guys, in a short amount of time. And I didn't hate the tank, but it was kind of depressing. It really was kind of depressing playing this and losing game after game after game, where you're basically either the last one or one of the last tanks on your team and the rest of your team have collapsed. We've all had days like that, and that's the way it was whenever I decided to play the VK, but our team have taken out the Conway, Batchat in the distance, and look at this aim time. The aim time is horrible, the accuracy is horrible, and, you know, I could have taken a risk a shot at the Batchat, but I was trying to aim in fully, but yeah, aim time and accuracy, don't like it on this tank. And even though I play the E100 occasionally, one thing I will say is the turret armor seems to be better on this. You don't have to worry about exposing your flat armor when you're playing this tank. On the E100, you've got to be very careful about not exposing your flat turret armor. But on this tank, you know, the turret armor seems to be very good. But I didn't get anything else out of that game. It was just 3,377 damage done. Only picked up 2 kills, but it's about the only game where I got to show off the armor, some side scraping, and just how annoying the gun can be. So just a 3rd class this time. I'm sorry, Beyond. I'm really sorry. But I did manage to pick up Steel Wall. So that pretty much shows off the armor. It wasn't a good game. As you can see, I finished up middle. Beyond is probably hating me now. I only picked up 800 XP, 3,377 damage done. Fired 12 and only managed to hit 7. And of the 7 I hit, I only managed to pen 5. So yeah, the gun is a little bit underwhelming. And as I say, it's the E100 gun, but it's just it's not as good as the E100 gun. The DPM is worse, reload is worse, same penetration, roughly the same accuracy and aim time though, but what you do see is we received 20 hits and we managed to bounce 16, and it's a pretty good side scraper. It really is a pretty good side scraper. I'll show you that in Tanks GG. We managed to bounce 4,700 damage with our armor, spotted 2, damaged 4, destroyed 2, and made a loss of 60,000 credits. So taking a look at the armor profile, the armor is indeed quite good, even if it's not historically accurate, because you've got 200 millimeters on the lower glacis. That is slightly angled. It means you've got 235 effective armor on the lower glacis. That can be improved with some angling. You can get it up to 260, 250. The upper glacis, again, 200 millimeters of armor, but it's angled, so you get effectively up to 287 frontally, which is very, very good. Again, side scraping and angling, you can improve that armor up to about 320. So yeah, the whole armor is quite good from the front, and the side armor is surprisingly good, because one thing you can do is you can angle, and you can see the effective armor is incredibly good. It can be incredibly good. The important thing with this tank, and as you saw in that game, is don't over angle, because if you over angle, then the side armor, well, still quite good, gets worse at the rear. The rear, when you angle, is quite weak. You could see it gets down to about 168, so just underneath the turret you can easily pen the back end of this tank, even if it's side scraping, just because he's slightly over angled. So yeah, it's not a perfect side scraper, but as long as you keep your angle quite effective, then you can see that yeah, it is. You're going to be bouncing a lot of shots. The turret armor is the one thing that did impress me from my gameplay, because the turret armor was incredibly good. I was bouncing Jagdpanzer E100s with my turret, so going hull down in this tank using your 7 degrees of gun depression is quite effective, even though it's the Leva turret. The Leva turret has very, very weak cheeks. You can pen a Leva turret with a lot of tanks in its cheeks, but you can't do that quite so easily with the VK72.01 because the turret cheeks, the gun mantlet is much bigger on the tank, and the turret cheeks don't exist. So you can see that there are some very, very weak areas that you might be able to pen, but most of the time you can see that the effective armor is anything from 700 to 400. So the turret, surprisingly well armored from the front. The gun mantlet, again, absolutely troll. Look at this. Look at the gun mantlet. 1469. You've got smaller areas, 400, 400, 600. You've got a row or a strip of spaced armor across the front of the tank here. That's about 600, maybe more. The front of this tank, incredibly well sloped, or incredibly well armored. The cupola, not the easiest thing to hit. I mean, it's quite small, so you can go for cupola shots. You can pen it quite reliably with higher tier tanks, but it's not the easiest target to hit. So I think the armor, if you keep this thing side scraping and you keep the hull down and keep the armor, the turret facing the enemy, then the armor is very, very effective. But when tanks get to your side and rear, then you come down to the old problem. The side armor only about 160, 165. Tracks do count as 40 millimeters of spaced armor, so your tracks will absorb some shots, but you know, most tanks are going to be able to pen the side of this tank, and the rear of the tank, not that great either. But the only thing, the armor is still pretty good in that tanks firing HE are going to still have problems penning you, even from the rear, but you get down to 150, 144 on the crew hatch at the back. Rear of the tank is only about 130, so 160 on the turret ring, so the armor can be quite good, especially against lower tier tanks, but I don't know. I think the DPM go against this tank a lot. I think the slow reload goes against the tank a lot, but I mean, if you've played the E100, you pretty much know what to expect from the gun, and the gun on this is just a little bit worse because the reload is a little bit slower, but yeah, overall, I thought the VK it's okay. To be honest, I would have preferred more time in the tank, because a lot of the games I was playing in it were just awful games or awful teams, and I wasn't happy with the footage I got, but that game you just saw was probably the one that got closest to showing off the armor, closest to showing off the gun, and maybe if I were to play it again, I'd fire more HE, as Beyond suggests, fire HE rather than heat, and, you know, he says the tank is a little bit more effective, but yeah, okay, that's the VK2801, a fantasy tank that never existed, because the VK72.01 is a Leva. It's the first variation, or the first version of the Leva, and that's not this tank, even though it looks like it. So there you go, first impressions of the VK72.01. I didn't hate the tank, I didn't like it, I had a fairly negative first impression because of the matchmaking, not because of the tank. Yeah, VK, to be honest, as I say, people compare this to the E100, but that's mainly down to the gun. I mean, it's not an E100. It is an E100 gun, but it's much more comparable to the VK4502B at Tier 9 for the Germans. Rear-mounted, similar frontal armor. You can side scrape, decent turret armor. Just don't let tanks get to your side and rear, just like that tank, and then it's a very, very similar playing experience, just with a much, much bigger gun. So, didn't hate the tank, didn't love it, think it's rather ugly, but in a cute sort of way, it's cute ugly. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.